I'm really excited to be able to bring IPMI, NACTO, and the OMF together to put on a conversation around the curb. Curb's a hot topic right now. It's the place to be, quite literally. And we've got three great organizations for you today to share some of the wisdom and experience about how to move curb management forward in our cities. I'm Andrew Glass Hastings. I'm the executive director of the Open Mobility Foundation. Thank you all for taking an hour out of your day and being part of this conversation. We hope this is by no means the end of the conversation. In many ways, it's going to help kick off work that we're going to do with you, that the OMF is going to do with NACTO and IPMI as we go into the future. So take a moment and thank our partners at NACTO and IPMI. Thank my fellow executive directors, Ryan Russo with NACTO and Sean Conrad with IPMI, and their teams for helping to put this event together. I'm a curb nerd at heart. What can I say? But also, I love cities and I love working with cities. I love working for cities and the communities and the people that are in our cities. And I've realized that cities are very much on the front lines of innovation every day. And yet, doing new things is always hard, but doing new things by yourself is even harder. So, opportunities through events like this, through conversations like this, to be able to create an opportunity for collaboration and some peer exchange is exactly what innovation needs and exactly what all three of these organizations want to bring to the table to be able to advance really good practice and policy around curb space management. From freight to ride hailing to micro transit, micromobility, just regular transit, buses in particular. The curb is a vital and yet very contested space. So what do we do about that? Well, we're gonna dive into that today, and I'm excited now to turn it over to Dylan, who's going to kick us off, give us a little context, and then introduce the panelists for today. So Dylan, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone. I'm Dylan Freed with Minneapolis Public Works. I'm excited to be here today to facilitate this conversation. Minneapolis does a lot of work with all three organizations, with NACTO, IPMI, and OMF. I'm going to just give kind of a brief overview of how we see each organization and how they fit into the curb ecosystem. And from there, we'll pass it to each rep from the organization and allow them, in their words, to kind of go through how they operate in the curbside management space. And from there, we'll get onto the discussion, the panel discussion, and eventually get to some Q&A from the audience. And so starting with NACTO, we have Sophia Brenner, a senior manager of multimodal design and programs for NACTO. Uh, the membership of NACTO consists primarily of city governments and transit agencies. The NACTO community really carves out space for municipalities to coordinate and collaborate on issues that are often overlooked by state and federal transportation agencies. Many of NACTO's active members tend to be planners and engineers, as NACTO really focuses a lot on street design and safety initiatives. The curb lane, you see what I did there, that I see NACTO fitting into, is really, I see it as kind of working to reconcile conflicts created by street design elements that prioritize space for biking, walking, and transit with the demand for curb access and loading and short-term uses. Next up, we have Mike Drauf, the CEO of Acera Technologies, representing IPMI. IPMI really brings together a very diverse collection of transportation professionals from cities, from parking authorities, airports, colleges and universities, medical campuses, along with a ton of private sector partners from all kinds of industries, like technology solution providers, equipment suppliers, really wide array of private sector partners. IPMI's annual conference has, dozens of educational sessions and workshops and a large showroom floor to bring together the operators, parking and mobility professionals with private industry to view their products and services. IPMI has numerous committees that meet throughout the year and produce a lot of content for their members. The curb lane that I really see IPMI occupying, it represents a lot of the experts in operations and enforcement that really tend to be leaders in technology implementations. Finally, we have Michael Schnurley, the Director of Open Source Operations from the OMF. The OMF is the youngest of the organizations. They were founded just back in 2019. The OMF was really founded specifically to help bridge that divide between public and private sector through open data standards. The OMF is the steward of the Mobility Data Standard, MDS, and they helped foster the development of the curb data specification, CDS, with their members. The membership of OMF includes many cities and other public agencies, along with a lot of private sector mobility technology companies. The curb lane I see OMF occupying is really fitting into helping cities build out digital infrastructure and then incorporate that into their transportation and asset management systems. So from there, we're going to hear from Sophia first, so I'll pass it to you, Sophia.
I'm going to add one thing before Sophia goes. We're doing a true lightning style presentation. So just for the audience to be aware, the slides are going to be advancing automatically and it's going to be quick. So appreciate all of our presenters for rolling with this style. And that's why it'll be kind of it's on a timer. All right. Sophia, let me know when you're ready, and then I will start both the timer and the slide.
All right. I'm ready when you are, Leo. I'll try to keep pace.
Okay. Thank you, Sophia, and let's start.
All right. So NACTO, which stands for National Association of City Transportation Officials, is comprised of member cities and transit agencies across North America. Joining NACTO isn't just joining a network, it's joining a movement to create vibrant, safe, connected communities for all. NACTO connects and mobilizes its members to achieve brave, people-first transportation policy and design. We currently have a little over 100 members across the US and Canada, and we accept applications for membership twice a year. The value we bring to our members in the field of transportation design can be grouped into our 4 Cs. Everyone has their E's or their C's. We've got convening, collaborating, curating, and communicating. We do this by hosting an annual conference, fostering peer knowledge sharing, publishing design guidance and best practice, and elevating city voices in the broader media. And speaking of the annual conference, we're really excited for our 2026 Designing Cities conference that will be in Minneapolis in May. Our conference brings together over 1,000 people passionate about advancing the state of transportation in North American cities, engineers, planners, government agency leaders, elected officials, advocates, and more. And if you are not in public practice, we have an excellent sponsorship benefits, and there is a sponsorship brochure on our website if you're curious. And speaking of another C, curating, another exciting announcement is that earlier this year, we published the 3rd edition of the Urban Bikeway Design Guide, which is now available online and in print. There's a lot of updated content, a lot of new content, and if you are member city staff, you may have attended one of the trainings we just wrapped up that was a guide to the guide. But let's talk about curb management. NACTO just convened more than a dozen members in Santa Monica for a roundtable. Shout out to our wonderful host in Santa Monica. We defined curb access needs, discussed curb lane design, shared regulation strategies, talked about data management approaches, and of course, we went on a walking tour and a lovely bike ride. The roundtable builds on NACTO's current work to dig in deeper to the challenge of managing the curb. And the best practices at the Curb Working Group was formed to help understand and identify the challenges as well as the solutions. The working group is part of the peer network system that we facilitate to encourage peer-to-peer learning. And with this whirlpool of knowledge, we aim to create guidance and best practice. I'm so used to creating a thank you slide. I think I budgeted 20 seconds of my time to saying thank you. But please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
All right. Thank you, Sophia. And thanks for the plug for Minneapolis hosting the 2026 Designing Cities Conference. We just got 5 inches of snow yesterday. I still managed to bike in today, however, but I promise for anyone, we'll melt all the snow for you guys before May 12th. So if anyone and everyone come all to Minneapolis for Designing Cities 2026. All right, next up, we have Mike Drow, the Chief Executive Officer for Acera Technologies, and he's going to be telling us about IPMI and what they have going on in the curbside management world. Pass it to you, Michael.
Thank you very much. We can go to that next slide. You can skip over that one. So who is IPMI and what has it accomplished? IPMI is the largest community for parking, transportation, and mobility professionals in the world. And through that collaboration globally, we've been able to accomplish a lot of different things, including creating best practice guidelines through our APO, defining a mobility glossary that helps people communicate better when sharing ideas. And our most recent work is the APDS data standard, which is now a ISO recognized standard throughout the globe. Who are our members? They're basically the professionals you need to engage for your mobility and transportation projects. Our members tend to be at the integration point between operations and technology and have a lot of useful information to include as you develop a project. So when you're thinking about starting a curbside project, what are some key considerations? Well, there are many to think about, but the first one I wanted to share is don't select the technology in hopes it will define your objectives. Go define your programming and your objectives, and then go select the technology. So how do you do this? Well, the first thing to do is go study what you want to look at. Don't come up with objectives until you go watch what's happening at the curb. There's a whole bunch of ways to do that. One is just pull out a chair and sit there and watch how the curbs are being used, identify who's using them, and then start to talk to various stakeholders. The people that are interacting with the curb are going to know and share a lot. Through those conversations, you'll be able to define the objectives and goals. And through those discussions, you'll be able to meet the stakeholders and start to work with them to understand what are potential objectives. Is it to increase availability of curb space, increase revenue, open it up to different users, or resolve a safety issue? Engaging with all those stakeholders will help you to find a specific desired project. And that's the key point we're trying to get to, is define a specific project. Be careful to try to boil the ocean. Don't try to solve all the problems at once. Be very specific when you're starting and work on an objective that can be accomplished in less than a year. Don't worry, over time, as you accomplish some results, you'll start to go after bigger projects. But don't rush it. Be very specific in your goals. And then only after you've identified your objectives and your goals, then you go out and select the technology. A key thing to remember, technology only speeds up processes. It doesn't define them. If you have a bad process or a bad idea, all technology is going to go do is speed it up. And so once you identify the project, identify the technology, and when selecting them, make sure they're working with a lot of different data specifications. Having an open source technology is key in a collaborative data world. And as listed here, and as the members on this call know, there are many different data standards out there that you have to bring together to make sure that you can not only collaborate within your sphere of experience, but with many other different partners that you'll want to engage with your curb. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. And IPMI puts on a great conference every year as well. This coming year, 2026, it'll be up in Milwaukee. And so the Midwest tour of conferences. So over in Milwaukee, the IPMI annual conference will be this coming June. I've gone for many years running. It's one of the best conferences out there. So I encourage everyone to check that out. Next up, we have Michael Schnurley from the OMF. He's the Director of Open Source Operations for the OMF. So I'll pass it to you, Michael.
Great. Thanks, Dylan. I'm ready to go, Leo. The Open Mobility Foundation was created in 2019, one of the youngest organizations, like Dylan mentioned, to support cities and industry. It is city founded and city led. Our board is city transportation officials, and we help cities and companies get to yes to make sure that they're ready for innovative technologies. We provide this forum for cities and tech companies to solve problems together. Everything we do is built in the open. We have tracked participation from over 1,400 individuals, 500 plus public agencies and companies. And this creates, with our open source standards of MDS and CDS, a more competitive market and better solutions for cities who are building products to these specs. We have regular public meetings with our members, and with any non-members are welcome to join those as well. Here's some of our members, both public and private. On our website is a complete list. This list is always growing. We'll have some more to announce soon. So happy to have our members help support our effort. It's free for public agencies to join the OMF. So I'll start with MDS. Version 2.1 just came out, and it is a standard to enable right-of-way regulation, digital policy, geofencing, and two-way communication between companies operating in the right-of-way and the public agencies. Over 200 commercial mobility service providers sent over 2 billion trips to cities using MDS and or receiving data from MDS, and they operate in over 1,000 cities around the world. MDS started with micromobility, but this is sort of the full view of what MDS can offer everyone right now. Everything in the micromobility space, the passenger space, fleet, car share space, delivery space. So if you are running one of these programs, MDS can help you manage those programs in your cities. The curb data specification manages curb space for cities. You can see a breakdown of all the sorts of areas that are applicable here. Defining and coding the curb is the first column in the curb area: rules, regulations, policies, objects at the curb. Event tracking is the next area, and then the metrics off of that to improve the digital curb space. Here's an overview of what that looks like. In green is your digital representation of your physical curb space. Those events get tracked, rolled up into metrics. Cities can define the curb spaces and define the policies and define the access rules and use sensors and or data from the operators to understand what's happening at every curb zone in their city. And then to bring this together, so ITE said curb space is where movement meets access. You can think of MDS as the movement side of the city, digital policy and movement of vehicles in the right of way. And CDS is the access and physical locations of the curbs, objects, and infrastructure in your cities. And these work together to give a complete picture of managing your right of way as a city.
All right. Thank you, Michael. So do want to mention Minneapolis is one of the founding board member cities of the OMF. We believe very strongly in the mission of the OMF. We would encourage anyone from public agencies of all sizes and absolutely private sector partners to check out the OMF and what they can bring to your organizations. Minneapolis is working hard to implement the curb data specifications as part of our Smart Grant project. So our work is continuing to be very in-depth and technical with the OMF. So from there, we're going to transition into the panel discussion. So panelists, I'm going to go through some of these. A few of them are for everyone. A few of them are for just a couple of the organizations, but feel free to jump in on any of the questions. The first one, all of the organizations represented here have member cities and jurisdictions of widely varying size and land use intensity. How does your organization support cities that are on different places on their curb management journey? Let's pass it to Sophia first to go in order.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think when it comes to best practice, and I'll just say when it comes to best practice, one of the first things that we're going to do is hear from our different member cities and start to collect case studies. And I think we are often finding, and I'm thinking right now of curb management, but beyond curb management, like the scope of the work at NACTO, I think we often find common threads among all of our member cities that do have not only great diversity in population size, but also in weather and other natural or political differences that have a huge impact on the ground. But I think when you take a bit of the best practice kind of high level approach, you start to see a lot of common thread. So I would say like we get to kind of roam around in that sphere. And that's, I think, part of our work at NACTO is finding what the commonalities are, whether it's the common challenges or the common solutions, and really being able to speak to those and getting more specific, I think, in our case studies can be really helpful for members as well.
Thanks. Mike?
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question as Sophia brought up. I think a key thing to remember is all of us are going to be at different stages of our projects and the complexity and what we're trying to solve. And I think that's where IPMI drives a lot of benefit is it helps connect these various groups together through committees and blogs and information sharing. But more importantly, by being able to set up mentorships, if you will. Hey, we know that project's going on in London, or this project's going on in New York City, and allows people to really dive into the details of what are you trying to solve, and hey, here's the mistakes we made, so you don't make them, or here are the really what you need to focus on because this is what drove our success. I'll give you a great example, and it hits on the internationality of what we're doing. In London, using the APDS standard, the UK has created a national parking platform. It started out in one of the cities, and it's now being expanded throughout the UK global area of influence. And that's now jumping over to cities in the US as well as other parts of Europe. And again, it's being able to share what's working and, oh, don't do that because that's a mistake.
Great. Michael, how does the OMF help cities at different points on their curb management journey?
Yeah, I think cities in particular are sort of maybe like the other panelists too are sort of strong suit. We are city led and city founded, city board that approves the changes to all of our releases. But we also listen to cities, maybe like you all do too, where what cities are doing that we learn about that, bring those cities together into our public forums and our member forums, and try to build off of that and replicate whatever work one city is doing across other cities. So I think for us, that replication is really important to allow us great success in Minneapolis to be used other places, like our SMART grant that you mentioned from the USDOT. We're able to sort of get everyone together and be on the same page, 12 cities working together and some more coming. The other thing about us, maybe similar to IPMI, is we're not just US based, we're international. We have many people using our specs we don't even really know because it's open source and free, and so people just grab it and use it. We have some numbers we've confirmed, like I had in one of my slides. But it's not just cities either. We also have counties, MPOs, states, and even countries that use the data standard. Some countries already in South America and Europe. And we because of that, we think of everyone as a public agency. And so many of those cities, states, countries are on different levels of readiness for this. But the specs are flexible. So you can start really small and just do a piece of one of your programs or modes and then scale from there and really take full advantage when cities like Los Angeles is one of our founding members. They're great at taking advantage of everything that is available in both of the specifications, but other cities are just starting out, and it's easy and flexible to do that.
Great, thank you. Next question up is really directed mostly at NACTO and IPMI and IPMI. So many enforcement agencies are involved with IPMI, which I think is a pretty big difference. There's enforcement is a lot less of a thing, I think, in the NACTO community. However, NACTO is very heavily emphasized on innovative street designs and engineering and planning. So my question is, how can we get the designers and engineers to collaborate better with enforcement and street operations personnel to come up with good, workable solutions to some of the new and innovative street designs? So Michael, or do you want
Yeah,
to take that
I'll
first?
start off
Okay.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's important, and it goes back to kind of the points I made in that fast point. It's about collaboration and sharing of information. And some of the challenges that initially start when you try to bring in different groups together is different groups tend to have different terminology, definitions, or if I can even go as far as say paradigms of how they look at things. So the first thing you need to do is get everyone talking the same language, and that's where a common set of data definitions is critical. And whether it's OMF, APDS, EV charging station data standards, having those data standards selected and integrated so that you can share data and talk about things in a common language help you to get to understanding what are the goals that we're trying to accomplish, and are we using the same metrics to monitor improvement that we're looking for. So again, the key to the collaboration is get to a common set of terms and language so that you can actually talk the same way to make results.
Great. Sophia?
Yeah, and I'll just add to that that best practices is in delivering services as well. It's not just designing streets, right? And we need to realize that maintenance and operations needs to inform design. And I think a huge part of making sure that happen is it's maybe the less exciting behind the scenes part of like internal organization and structures. And that, Dylan, as you know, has been a big topic on our curbs, best practice at the curbs working group, because a lot of the work that needs to be done is perhaps not like a flashy new product or like reinventing the wheel, if you will, but it's more about how do we get different teams talking and how do we get different, maybe a different work structure to work that's already existing. I mean, all of these organizations, not just talking about municipal or transit agencies, but really any organization that is big, private company, public agency, there's silos, and that's natural. And you have to continue to try to break down those silos. And I think what we're seeing with curb management is that it's a very holistic field. And so one of the first things that I think we all need to improve on is really, as we've all been talking about here, it's really like that shared vocabulary, that language, and just figuring out a way to do perhaps similar work, but restructure it.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I come more from the operations world, but I've been increasingly involved with some of our street redesigns, and the planners are always and designers are eager for data like that we can represent on what's actually taking place at the curb. And so I think it's really important for that communication to be happening and breaking down some of those silos. Absolutely.
Dylan, if I could just add one more thing that I think is critical to the collaboration. I
Mhm.
come to work every day thinking everyone wants to do a good job. And what sometimes happens when you bring these different groups together is they unknowingly have competing objectives. And so making sure you understand what the other parties are trying to achieve can help to reduce those conflicts before you're in the middle of a project and you recognize, why is this person fighting me? Well, they're not fighting you. They're trying to do what they think is best as well. So taking that time to understand what people's objectives are is just as important too as the vocabulary or definitions in common language.
Absolutely, absolutely. So next question is really for all. So how do your organizations that you're representing interface between the private and public sector to help cities and practitioners build modern curbside management programs? Michael, Shnerly, you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, sure. I think I mean that interface is what we thrive on. We with the data standards we create, they're used by both the private sector and the public sector. And so we need everyone to be in agreement that it's the best, we have the best solution for everybody. And so the private sector is involved a lot in all of our public meetings and online when we develop our specifications. And we have a technology council that helps approve the releases, and it's made up of a majority of private companies before it goes to our city board. But yeah, I think that for us, that collaboration is important. It creates an interface. So if you're a private sector member and you're interfacing with the OMF as a member or a participant, you're then connecting to the cities and the public sector there. And I think something that we found over the years is that really creates a sense of trust and understanding of the needs and limitations of both parties. And by understanding that, like, gets everyone to agree to the middle ground and come to that yes sooner for how everything could be managed in the most effective way for everybody.
Sophia or Michael, do either of you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I can. It's an interesting issue because private entities usually have slightly different objectives, or maybe vastly different objectives than a public sector organization. Yet, when, as Sophia said, at the curb, all of these different groups are merging and integrating in together. And so I think the key is in understanding what all of the stakeholders are trying to do and how are they doing. So how do the organizations help with that? I know at IPMI, as I think all the groups do, they reach out and help foster communications. Like if a city's trying to get something done and they can't get the project a project moving or can't get a hold of someone, I mean, these are why you should reach out to these organizations because they typically know someone on that private sector side, or if the private sector needs someone help with the public sector, they can make those connections. And boy, when you get two people talking together, there's really nothing you can't accomplish. But it's always getting that first communication to start going.
And I'll just add that, the curb is public. There's not a lot of land in the US that is truly public and in a space where that is highly utilized kind of in that way. And so I think something that is important to kind of circle back to and stay grounded on is that this is a public space that is maintained by public agencies, and we need to kind of remember and encourage, those agencies that are fostering that space to remember everyone who uses it. As we all know, professionally and personally, with all the demands at the curb, it can be very overwhelming, I think, for practitioners who yes, I'll just say it can be very overwhelming for practitioners to balance all of those voices. And I really enjoy kind of working for NACTO and being able to uplift the public service and kind of remain grounded on that goal of serving the public when thinking about design and programmatic choices.
Yeah, absolutely. I've spent time on both the on and off street side of the parking world in my career, and it is a whole different ballgame when you're operating the right of way because there's a different set of values brought to the table there. When cities try to roll out paid parking as a way to bridge budget gaps to make revenue, that's the fastest way to sink a paid curbside parking initiative. So keeping those values straight is very important when thinking of how you manage the curb. So this one is more so. This next question is more directed at NACTO and OMF, but Michael Drow, feel free to jump in too. How do your organizations, or how do you see the evolution of street design and operations as better data becomes available through things like smart devices and smart sensors? We've touched on this a little, but do you mind? How do we think our streets are going to evolve as we have better data?
I'll start. I'll say, street design and operations have been using data for a long time. And our current street design and thinking of modern street design, I think on the whole, it hasn't actually changed that much. But and Michael can get into the details of how much it's changed on the data side. Um, because it has in a granular sense, but on kind of on the whole, it really hasn't. Like we are operating streets in a fairly similar way. We are figuring out how to make those operations more efficient with technology and safer with certain technologies. And again, I think from the NACTO perspective, it's really all about identifying our goals of serving the public, our goals of maintenance and operations. And any technology that is going to help serve those goals is something that should be looked into, researched, and tried out and implemented.
Yeah, I think NACTO's mission, I think, you're terrific at that sort of helping cities define the curb space and make the changes that are needed to best serve the public. And I think where the OMF is sort of trying to maybe give cities more information there, more data to make that even better is with the data standards. It's not maybe not always clear with data standards, but when a city has some sort of ability to write into these standards about how not only define the curbs, but who is accessing the curbs and what that activity is at each curb's zone. I think if you can get that data by writing it into your permits and contracts in a way that's the same across all sorts of sensors and platforms and apps and meters, that allows cities to really make sense of what's happening at the curb quicker and better, and then make those physical changes as needed or policy changes. And we see it as we were sort of on the digital management side of things. So we see things going to more and more digital management of a curb zone or the right of way. So instead of having signs that you have to change every year or whenever you can change them or have to, it might be one sign that says, here's our digital policy and here's how you can access. And those tools are integrated into everybody's operations, whether you're a public or private sector person operating at the curb. So I think, street design, just going back to your question to Sophia about the kinds of data. We used to work for the city of Louisville, and I helped our transportation people get to yes on infrastructure changes, both in sort of protected bike lane world, but also some curb access, where by using MDS data around where bikes and scooters had been operating, we could show to city council and to the public that, look, we have definitive proof that there was not only like 100,000 bikes going down this corridor, but where they went to in the rest of the city, where those vehicles were moving around, to show that it's not just affecting this one little place, it affects the whole city when you can provide safe access for people. And that allows many cities to change that infrastructure based on that more granular data. And as cities get that data, using MDS, for instance, with Uber and Lyft and autonomous robo-taxis, and they can understand where's the deadheading happening, where is the roaming and circling the block happening, where is the actual access needed. And so I think you'll see more and more granular data available that can really inform those decisions in the future.
The only thing I would add to that is, while I don't think the physical street design is going to change, I think hopefully all of our streets stay straight and flat. That's my hope. But I do think you're going to start to see some fascinating new uses of our streets. We're going to see more automated truck delivery. And so this kind of goes off of what Michael's talking about with the digital side of things. We're going to need to think about where to capture data from places we never thought we needed to capture from. There are going to be many more users trying to get that. So having an open data standard that can receive that data is going to be critical, because that's going to help us come up with new policies. So again, the street design isn't going to change much, but the operations and the policies around how you allow these other users is going to be critical. And if you're not out looking in for new sources of data or new users, if you think it's just the same people, you're probably going to be surprised over the next 5 years when you start to see the data not making sense unless you're looking for other data.
All right, all right. Well, we're going to get to some of the Q&A or questions from the attendees of the webinar here in just a couple of minutes. However, it's time to get down to some real talk, you guys. I want some like nice gritty answers for you. I want some hot takes from you. I have some quick questions here that I promise all of the attendees, the panelists haven't seen these in advance, but I'd like you guys to give just a quick answer on some of my hot take questions here. So first up, a huge topic in the curbside management world. Trucks parking in bike lanes, solvable or learn to live with it? Sophia.
Solvable? Both?
Yeah, I'd say solvable for sure. I mean, from a physical and a digital, I think, some cities are doing automated enforcement. I think, when you have multiple car lanes available on one bike lane, it'd be preferable for the truck, I think, to block one car lane for the safety of everyone. So anyway, I think it's solvable.
I definitely agree if it's solvable, but wishing for people to do the right thing isn't always right. Sometimes you got to hit them economically. Economics is an amazing behavior changing agent, and I think that's where anyone who manages a curve has to think about how does economics change behaviors, whether it's fees, permits, etc.
Well, I love you guys' optimism. I've been biking around trucks in the bike lane for the better part of a decade or more, so I hope you're right eventually. So, all right, our next hot take. Curb technology solutions, should they be the carrot or the stick?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I missed it.
Yep, curbside management technology solutions. Should they be the carrot or the stick? Basically, enforcement or incentivizing what we want in other ways.
All right, so
I'll,
oh, go ahead, Michael.
no, go, Mike.
I, the technology we do is used across toll roads and municipalities throughout the world. And I think it's both. By showing people what their actions are doing, sometimes people are surprised at how they're using a certain asset or a certain tool. And that helps to do it. So I think collecting data, letting people know, hey, you've been at the curb for 25 minutes and it was a 15-minute zone. They can start to correct their behavior. But then you do need the stick side, which is what, like Michael said, automated enforcement or some sort of billing service. Because again, I think some people's behavior will be altered by some data, but economics need to be employed in there. And you can't have people walking around necessarily trying to shoo people out of different lanes. That becomes an unbearable practice.
All right, Sophia, Michael.
Yeah, I would say both as well. I think, we've seen cases with using MDS and CDS where people use it for both. Like we have some cities that don't necessarily have authority, let's say, even to ask for data or to do enforcement, but they're able to provide information using the specs for the operators to make that safer for them. And so that's sort of like the carrot side of things. And then the stick side is, yeah, sometimes you got to use enforcement. I think what we see is this sort of self enforcement, maybe a middle ground where operators are sending information to the cities of what they're actually doing. And then the cities look at that and then enforce them based on that, based on the predetermined rules. So I really see that as a way forward.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say carrot because I feel like I had to say one or the other. So I'm going to say carrot.
All right.
um, for this particular answer. I think there are many sticks in the tool bag, but for this usage of kind of the curbside technology, I'm going to go with carrot.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I agree, it's probably both, but I also feel like you can't enforce your way out of a problem all the time. So unless we're using data to get the design piece right and the operations piece right, we're not doing all that we need to do. All right, next hot take. Autonomous vehicles, pick me up right now, or no thanks, I'll pass. Michael? John
Oh,
or Shirley?
I'll go first. I think mine might be the shortest. I mean, I feel like yeah, pick me up now, but I think there needs to be, just like all sort of things operating in the right of way, the right guardrails and the right safety measures. But I think autonomous vehicles of all types have a role to play in the urban ecosystem. But I don't think anyone would agree that they should just run loose and do whatever they want. I think there's a little bit of safety and oversight needed there.
I was going to say, whether it's pick me up or deliver that thing to me now, I think you're going to see, as in any technology, it's going to enter into different spaces. And I think the logistics world is going to be that final mile delivery is going to be a big thing. And this goes to the whole topic of the curbside. Is it mapped out properly? Do we have the right policy set up in a digital format so that a computer can understand what is it allowed to do? It goes back to the carrot stick we were just talking about. Computers, unlike humans, will follow rules explicitly. But I think we're going to find, as we start to digitally define our worlds, that there are a lot of things that aren't defined or have conflicting measures. How many times have we seen a sign that says 2-hour parking, and then on the other side it says no parking? So those are the things that we're going to have to work out to allow. The technology's ready today. I think the world needs to catch up, and we need to get our policies defined and digitized to support the technology.
Sophia?
All right. Well, this is my personal hot take, but no thank you. I'll say no thank you. I like humans.
Cool. All right. I think from there we'll shift gears to some of the Q&A questions from the chat here. So, now I guess I'll start with this one. To what degree has should curb management stakeholders consider fleet electrification into the equation? How do we see EV charging and other electric vehicles like interfacing with the curb space?
Sorry, fleet electrification. I'm curious if that's more specific, or I mean, Dylan, you were kind of touching on the general landscape.
Yeah,
I
I think
yeah.
the spirit of the question is like curbside EV charging and incentivizing electric vehicles at loading zones. Like, how should we be leveraging curb to help foster electrification?
I kind of just want to throw out some food for thought, which I think is interesting around this, is that, when it comes to fueling stations for, let's say, our more traditional motor vehicles, that's a completely private enterprise that's happening back of curb on private land. And so it's interesting to me that with the shift to EV, there's been like a huge outcry for public land and public operations and public power supply. Um, just so that I'm just throwing that out there as kind of an interesting thing to stew on.
Mhm.
I was going to throw out, I think there's some infrastructure challenges more so, whether like should we allow EV truck? Our electrical network and our electrical infrastructure in the US isn't ready to support widespread EV charging. So can you put electric charging stations all up and down the street? It's going to be a significant investment. So I think maybe going where Sophia is going, it's we need to think about how do you deploy assets like that in a cost efficient way that still balances out the need. Yes, we all want to have, yeah, I would love to be able to fill up my car with the gasoline at the curb, but it's not realistic. So why should we do that with an EV station as well? Is an interesting point.
I'll just
Sure.
for for a hot take, I'll just say if we can build AI data centers and have the electricity to do that, we should be able to build our electric charging network as well. And then, I also I would love to see the conversation grow into not just cars and truck charging, but also bikes, e-bikes, cargo e-bikes, etc. as part of that conversation for charging.
Absolutely. Particularly in Europe, I think we see a lot of incentivization of those types of vehicles, right? Like cargo trikes and low emission zones that in the US we're doing a lot less of that type of work here. So all right, so we've talked a lot about data today. A lot of the organizations here are heavy in data. How does the panel anticipate challenges from those with privacy concerns as data collection grows? You know, can we make data anonymous enough for some of the data collection to be still considered private?
That is a great question. And Europe through GDPR has some pretty strict rules and guidance. And I think data privacy, especially as consumers and individuals are starting to become more and more aware of how their data has been used for the last 20 years, there is going to be significant change and evolution of the laws around this. So is it going to be able to get an anonymous to the point that where you don't lose usability of the data? Because as soon as you start to lose what type of vehicle was it or where is that person coming from, you start to lose some of the value of the data. So it is going to be a fascinating journey over the next 5 to 10 years as some of this gets worked out in, frankly, the court of law of what is, how do someone give rights to their data and what are companies allowed to do with it and municipalities.
Yeah, at the OMF, I think partially because what we're doing is entering a new realm of data standards and the understanding of where vehicles are in the right of way. This has been a topic. We have a privacy committee. It's been a topic from the beginning. So a few things like we've created a privacy guide for cities, which talks about how to handle the different data. We are also GDPR compliant. So if people in Europe want to use it, we have a guide for how to make MDS GDPR compliant. I think the other thing that we try to do, which all our specs do, is we don't collect any information or share information about individual riders or those like detailed transactions between them. We don't know riders' names, addresses, credit cards, anything like that. Like some other data specs will have payment transaction details, or other things to connect riders across different modes. We don't do that. We intentionally just look at vehicle movement. Now, of course, there are some privacy concerns if you have detailed vehicle movement, but we feel like cities can handle this. As a chief data officer in a city formerly, cities handle all kinds of sensitive data, health inspections, permits, all sorts of things. So I think that this is a level below that sort of data based on what we have in our data standards. And so I feel like cities are capable of handling this, and there are tools to anonymize it, and there's other third-party aggregators that can be used in some situations as well.
And I'll just add that I think federal regulations are key in this environment. Not that I feel particularly hopeful about where we are with that right now, where we might go in the near future. But if you look at the regulatory landscape in different countries, you start to see a lot more care and attention, which is, I think, it's just required. I think a regulatory environment at the federal level is very important for this particular question.
All right, I think we got time for about one question, maybe a minute and a half. So if you can, in 30 seconds or less, what is the first thing that cities should do when starting to look at their curb management policies and practices to modernize them?
I would say go.
City staff just need to talk to each other. First step.
I was going to say, kind of to my slides, go look at the stakeholders and engage them and try to identify what are the key objectives that are the most immediate to solve that involve all the stakeholders.
Yeah, and I'd say for us, it's like talk and look at your other cities and see what they're doing to learn. But if you're going to look at trying to optimize your curb zones and space and parking, I think really a big first step has to be coding the curb. You've got to understand where those things are. Some cities still don't even know where their parking meters are exactly. And so you have to understand a little bit about that in a more holistic way before you can make improvements to it.
Can't manage what you can't measure, right, Michael? So, yep. All right. From there, I think I'll pass it to Leo to do some closing, but I want to thank all of the panelists for the wonderful discussion. It's been a fun hour.
Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. And thanks for all the panelists. Thank you to everybody who joined us. We had a lot of questions that we weren't able to answer. Thankfully, you're coming to a webinar with 3 great organizations in it. I would encourage you to contact us with these questions. There were some really specific ones that I think Sophia and NACTO can take a look at, but yeah, get in touch, get involved, learn more about each of our organizations. We'll send a follow-up email with recording of this, as well as some resources from each organization. So thank you so much for spending time with us.